Much more than just that. The EU is a global actor and as such wishes to promote a comprehensive partnership with the partner countries, in this particular case with the Gambia. This means a mature, respectful and mutually benefiting relationship that goes beyond mere traditional development assistance. With the change of regime in the country, the EU-Gambia relationship could be fundamentally transformed. From the outset, the European Union affirmed its support to the democratic transition in the Gambia and to the realization of the Gambian National Development Plan. Now, supporting the democratic transition is the objective. You can conclude saying that as long as Gambia stays on the democratic path, the European Union will be there to support. So, this time today, we are concentrating on what this development assistance has been so far, in particular in the Gambia. If you may recall, already in 2017, the EU Commissioner for International Development and Cooperation, visited the country, and during this visit, who, by the way, he was the first Western high-ranking VIP coming to the country after the changes, he immediately signed a package of 75 million euro per support, and also announced a second package of 150 million euro mid-term support for the support of the country, especially back in 2017, we supported the financial situation in the country. You may recall Gambia and the Gambian economy and the financial situation in Gambia was extremely fragile right after the changes, and I think it was indeed a fundamental interest to make sure that the newly elected government will not collapse because of the financial crisis. So no surprise, Mimica came in February. By August, the first tranche of budgetary support could be dispersed. That means from treasury to treasury. In Gambian dollars, it was 1.37 billion, the budgetary support. Now, this is how it started. These packages are, of course, project interventions and or budgetary support. And then it started being rolled out. However, in 2018, the EU-Gambia partnership reached another dimension by jointly organizing the international conference for the Gambia in Brussels, which turned out to be a fantastic success in terms of overwhelming international support for the Gambia, which resulted in a mobilization of a total of 1.45 million euro pledges from all kinds of countries and international organizations. Above all, it also showed that the Gambia is back to the international community. The Gambia is trusted by the international community. That's why Gambia was able to obtain such an overwhelming support. The international community, including the European Union, made it very clear that we have an interest in supporting the democratic transition in the country. Now, the EU also put her words into practice at the conference by adding 140 million euros more to the already substantial development assistance promised to the country. So this is the time, by the end of the conference, by which time the overall EU pledge, the total EU pledges for the country, was raised up to 365 million euro. The first package 75, the second package 150, and the conference, altogether 365 million euro under the current financial framework. Now, I do believe the quick reactions in terms of delivering support, and especially the relatively speedy disbursement of budgetary support, certainly have the government, the country, to be financially stabilized back in 2017. And balancing its budgetary situation whilst accompanying it in its much needed public finance management reforms. Apart from this direct budgetary support, because the first one was in 2017, the second one was actually last year. Apart from this, the EU has also expanded its activities in a wide range of fields with the aim of improving the daily lives of Gambians. We work in partnership with the government as well as with a wide range of other partners, non-state actors if you wish. Just to give you a few examples, those implementing different EU projects include many different UN agencies, like the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, UNICEF, World Food Programme, or NGOs, international NGOs, like ActionAid International, Gambia, SOS Children Village, Gambia, and many more. The number is actually growing. With our safety nets, school meals, and biofortification programs, we want to improve the food and nutrition security of the most vulnerable, especially the rural areas, women and children. This is complemented by interventions aimed at improving agricultural practices so as to increase local production and marketing, as well as food availability and competitiveness of Gambian agriculture. Production is extremely important in this country. The EU complements this support in rural areas with an investment of more than 100 kilometers of feeder roads rehabilitation that will allow population, especially in remote areas, to better access markets and social services. This is, let me emphasize, this is not an infrastructure project or program for the sake of infrastructure. This is a program which complements other programs, support to agriculture, by helping getting access to markets for those in the agricultural programs. Of course, as a global actor, we in the EU side also share with the Gambia our responsibility to address causes of climate change, to fight its negative impacts, especially in terms of coastal erosion. This is why in 2018 we started the second intervention, 5.3 million euro intervention in the frame of the Global Climate Change Alliance. This shows the European Union commitment to fighting climate change, and we didn't change our attitude in this regard. As I said, this is the second intervention. There are other countries, big countries, who may change their attitude, but as far as the European Union is concerned, we keep our words. I know all these are not enough. We all know that. People want jobs, training, they want to be able to become entrepreneurs, to be assisted in setting up a business. The well-known, and I personally consider it as a flagship project, the Youth Empowerment Project, or does precisely that, with an acknowledged success. I think we can all be very proud of what YEP achieved so far, which is a collaboration between EU, Gambian state actors, as well as Gambian population youth. Recently, it has been complemented by an intervention implemented by the UN Capital Development Fund that will work on easing access to credit, especially for young entrepreneurs, whilst providing entrepreneurship support and working locally to create green jobs. A whole new program for assisting Gambians returning from the back way to better reintegrate and find new opportunities in the Gambia has been put in place. A new package, a very substantial package of different interventions. Major actors, partners for the EU to implement these packages, like the Belgian, the Portuguese and the German cooperation agencies, are coming to the Gambia, have already settled in the Gambia to implement these programs. At the end of 2018, we also signed 2 new agreements in the infrastructure sector. One is a contract with the African Development Bank, which will allow the finalization of works for the long-awaited Trans-Gambian corridor, so that the bridge, this engineering masterpiece, could eventually effectively play its role to gather people in the Gambia and Senegal, as well as the whole West African region. This will be a true game changer. In other words, the bridge, which we built, will be connected to the border crossing, both the northern as well as the southern side, with good quality access road, which can bear the heavy traffic, the bridge and the whole corridor. The other contract in this infrastructure segment was with our partner, the European Investment Bank, which we also signed last year. This has the potential to change the life of the Gambian population, and in particular the quality of the health and education services. Because in addition to the installation of a 20 megawatt solar power plant and the rehabilitation of the distribution lines, it will also provide access to electricity to all schools and health centers in the country. Yes, all schools and health centers will be benefiting from this project, with or off-grid solutions, but they will all be connected. That practically means hospitals, health centers, schools, they will have electricity 24/7. In this regard, Gambia will be the first country in Africa who has got this provision. Now, this project will eventually be launched next Monday, and I hope to see you, most of you there, at the launching event. Invitation is being already distributed separately. We are also cautious that the Gambia still has many challenges to face. Among those, one of the most pressing one is probably security. There can be no development without security. We all know that. That's why, from the beginning, the European Union was making serious efforts to support and actually to ensure security in the country, which took place in the form of funding the international forces stationing in the country. So from spring 2017, after the intervention, the stationing of economic forces are funded by the European Union. Under the current mandate, it is funded until the end of August this year. Eventually, security should be a Gambian responsibility to ensure security in the country, and to that end, the EU is also supporting the Gambia, building its capacities to achieve that goal. We are supporting the security sector reform in the Gambia by providing essential technical assistance to this process. The Gambia enjoys international assistance, but then the Gambia also has no time to lose in this respect. Economic forces will not stay in the country forever. And by the time economic forces will be pulling out, the government, the security sector has to be reformed and transformed into a new stage whereby they are capable of providing the necessary security in the country. That's why the sector reform is key importance, and we expect from the European Union side much more progress in SSR. The partnership between the EU and the Gambia is not limited to development cooperation, as I mentioned. Every year, hundreds of thousands of Europeans enjoy the hospitality of the Gambia, the Smiling Coast. They spend money in the country, they create jobs, and provide a living for thousands of Gambian families. Moreover, every year, the European Union is covering the mobility of a number of Gambian students and teachers to European universities and high schools. We also facilitate European teachers coming to the Gambia to assist in your schools and universities. In this respect, in 2018, our Erasmus Plus scheme allowed for 49 exchanges. 34 Gambians came to Europe and 50 Europeans came to the Gambia. a new call for applications has recently been launched. I think it's important that the partnership, the cooperation between EU, European member states and the Gambia also includes this field, this particular field of exchanges in school students, university students, and teachers. I hope in the future we'll be able to enhance the number of these exchanges. Another example, fisheries. In 2018, as you know, we concluded a sustainable fisheries partnership agreement, which is going to be signed sometime this spring, that will strictly frame European fishing in the Gambian waters, whilst it will reinforce the Gambian capacities for sustainable governance of fisheries. This contrasts with the numerous vessels that are engaged in illegal fishing as we speak now, and that the damage Gambian fish stocks and the environment at large. Since August 2018, the Gambia is also a signatory of the European Partnership Agreement that allows Gambian products free access to a market of more than 500 million consumers, the European market, whilst at the same time allowing the Gambia to progressively liberalize up to 85% of its market over a 20-year-long period. In other words, this partnership is asymmetric. Gambia has totally free access to the European market, while the Gambian market will only be opened up 85% in a 20-year-long period. So it's asymmetric. This is also the way the European Union wishes to encourage the increase of production in the Gambia and access to markets for Gambian products. I believe by chipping in and mentioning these past few examples of partnership, content of the partnership between Libya and the Gambia, I think I was able to let you understand how wide the scope is, how many different projects and activities we have been supporting in the country. I also know this is far confusing. I can tell you I am not a development expert. So when I started grasping what's going on under my flag, under the European Union support, it was challenging for me to understand the many different layers, the many different types of interventions, and especially because many interventions are coming from many different funding sources. Now, so you are not alone if you don't understand yet. That's why we also felt it's important that you are provided with all the factual information you need when you want to dig in, when you want to report about it, or you want to dig into specific details of any of the collaboration and project interventions. Now, we prepared a kind of overall overview of what these projects are. And let me, before entering into details, let me remind you to start with this one. So this is the general overview. It gives you an understanding of what are the sectors where the interventions are concentrated. You see the total picture, the cake, and you see the different sizes of the different slices of cake, representing the different segments we are entering into. Once you digested this, in the sense that you see the different sectors like governance, security, rule of law, or infrastructure, energy, rural development, migration, employment, etc., then you may feel interested going into specific details according to the needs of your paper, of your radio or TV, or of your readers. I would certainly encourage you to always approach the table like this. Now, the big chunk in here is where you have the very basic details but necessary details of each and every project which is currently running in the country as we speak. You have the title of the project, which gives you an understanding of what is the scope. You have the contractor, so you can see who is implementing this project on behalf of the European Union from European Union funding. And of course you have the date of duration, start and end date, and you have the most important, most effective part, the budget of the project. Now, I am not intending to get lost in the details now. Of course you will have possibility for questions, during which time you may engage in specific project as well if you wish. What I would like to underline here is the following. We can probably say that as we speak now, it's 347,559 point something. That is the total amount of EU funding being delivered into the country in form of A, project intervention, B, direct budgetary support. If you compare this with what I mentioned in the context, like what the EU promised, first package, second package, donor conference, 360,000, we are reaching it. That is very clear indication what we promised on the EU side, we deliver. We are busy delivering. So rest assured, the grants the European Union promised is in the making for the benefit of the country. The other aspect I would like to emphasize here on the cake is that there's a big change already regarding the way we deliver this support to the Gambian. Under Jammeh's time, the cake was like a cupcake. I mean, this is now a big cake. But not only the difference was the size of the cake. I think in the best years of Jammeh's regime, in the best years, like when more than 50% of the Gambian paved roads were built from EU funding. In those years, in those best 5 years, there was no more than 50 million max delivered into the country in terms of in form of project support. And more importantly, they were all delivered to the country via non-state actors because Jammeh was not trusted. The difference now is that this 50 million is actually 365 million. Okay? And the difference is that out of this 365 million, roughly more than 1/3 comes in as a direct budgetary support, which means this is entirely up to the government how to spend. We are not giving budgetary support to the government to do something. We make a contract with the government, we jointly establish benchmarks. Once those benchmarks are achieved by the government, we disperse the budgetary support. Hence, they have a bit of freedom to use the budgetary support the best way. Of course, the benchmarks, to achieve benchmarks, they have to invest, they have to do something, they have to work for it, they even have to financially do something about it. But I will come back to that. So, at this stage, I wanted you to understand how different this scope of operations and the modus operandi is compared to the dictatorship times. One more thing. We focused on development cooperation, but also with the aim that we do not forget the other component of the partnership, and that's the political cooperation. We have been engaging in policy dialogues with different government actors rather continuously. It's very intensive because there are a lot of issues we have common interest. Now, I know your readers are also confused in the sense that all this money is coming from the EU, but I don't feel a penny. Indeed, that's also a critical aspect for us to make sure that whatever we bring into the country in terms of project support will eventually make a positive feeling among the population. Rest assured, this is among the objectives of for every intervention. And this also is important in the sense that we don't do partnership, development cooperation for the sake of cooperation. We do it for a very specific set of objectives. And it is our responsibility at the delegation to make sure that the projects implemented reach their objectives and they are resulting in something sustainable. I might have taken the floor for too long. I certainly would like to encourage you to give yourself time to digest the big table. But right now, of course, we would be happy to answer your questions, any specific questions. May I ask first that we give priority to those questions who are related to the issue we discussed now, the comprehensive table and overview of EU cooperation, development assistance in Gambia. And once we exhausted those questions and we still have time, we can then talk about any other business and you may ask any other questions. So this is also because Stefan might need to leave earlier than I can, so any specific project-related question, he may be the one answering your question. And this is also because this is the main purpose of this event. Now, I keep encouraging you to use this opportunity to ask whatever you want, of course. I also keep encouraging you to approach our office, ask for interviews, ask for background discussions, ask for clarifications, whatever it is, when you are busy making your arguments. I'm not complaining, don't get me wrong, but I also have to admit that given the context of nowadays media landscape and the many issues popping up, I'm a bit surprised to receive so little interview requests and clarification requests or whatever media talk requests from the different media representatives in the Gambia. I'm not encouraging you to keep my office occupied 24/7, bombarding with questions, but certainly you are welcome. Please also keep in mind that we have a very active, we are very active both on Facebook and Twitter, and please keep your eyes on these platforms because we have, we actually upload all important information, interesting opportunities or competitions, and I think that is the easiest way to spread the word. With all that included, thank you for your attention, and the floor is open for questions. Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. My name is Gambian. I work for the partner. You talked about the Brussels conference. This is something that President Adam Barrow has started as one of his biggest achievements, that this is going to be very important when it comes to the National Development Plan. You talked about it in your statement, but then there are some technical issues here. So I want to know, in percentage terms, how much has been, this conference took place back in May last year. So I want to know in percentage terms, how much has been disbursed so far, coming to 1 year now?
Okay. Follow-up on the conference pledges is responsibility of the government. So I cannot speak on behalf of the government, neither can I speak on behalf of other international players who made their pledges. What I can tell you that what the European Union pledged is 100% kept. So when I said that the total amount we reached so far is 347,000 blah blah blah.
So that is what?
Sorry, 347 million blah blah blah.
Yes.
That is close to the EU total pledge, which was 365 million.
So what we can say that 90% of EU pledges. What the
It's more than 90%. I am very bad in mathematics, but if you have a calculator, do the calculation quickly, because out of 365, having almost 350 is probably a bit more than 90%. Yes. And the importance, don't forget, the time frame within which all these instruments are mobilized. The time frame is not 1 year. The time frame is the multi-annual financial framework of the European Union, the so-called financial cycle, which comes to an end in 2020. So, in other words, since the London conference, we are talking about 3 years, right? 18 may actually stay longer than 2020 before it is fully completed, but the funding is made available and booked. And this is the 3-year period in which the European Union will roll out this 365 billion euro worth project intervention, including everything. And this is what I mentioned to compare with any best 5 years of the Jammeh regime. Because the annual, this multi-annual framework is basically 5 active years. If you compare that, any best time of Jammeh's regime, that's where you may not find more than 50 million roughly in 5 years. And now we are talking about 365 million in 3 years. Now, for the grants of the pledges, it's always the easier part. And as you all know, the donor conference also resulted in pledges of loans and not only grants. The Europeans did not pledge loans, we pledged grants. But the overall international community did pledge loans as well. The loans are tricky because given the country's indebtedness, the government doesn't have the freedom to take up really additional loans. Exceptionally, if it is so much concessional loan with really low rates, very exceptional. Otherwise, the government has to focus on following up on the grants because that's the easiest part. And in that sense, from the EU side, it can be considered like a done deal.
Okay, since the European Union is responsible for the mobilization of the funds, so I want to know.
European Union funds. European mobilization of funds in general.
Okay, that's fine then.
Again, the international conference consisted of I don't know how many number of countries from around the world and different international organizations. Now, all of these participants, they are sovereign entities. The European Union cannot force them to do whatever they used to do. So they made a pledge, which was a serious pledge. It is up to the government to make sure that they follow up on the pledges of those international partners. What I can vouch for are those who are under the aegis of European Union and its member states. And that's what I'm saying. Those pledges, those grants are solid. And as far as the EU pledges are concerned, it's being rolled out.
So let me ask you this. With regard to the EU pledges, what are some of the conditions, specifically, what are some of the conditions that are attached to this? Because we have seen this, I know I am veering off a bit, but we have seen this issue of Gambian migrants, undocumented migrants living in European countries being sent back to the Gambia. I mean, speculation is rife that there's a deal that has been signed between the European Union and the Gambia government. So can you take us through that? What are some of the conditions that are attached to the EU grants?
I hope you will also find it in the handout, this colorful paper, what I already included in my explanation. The condition is that Gambia remains on the democratic path. I remember 2017, February, Commissioner Weihgs came here and made the first pledges, the 2 package, 225 million. How many forced migrants did we talk about in 2017? Any? No. This development assistance is for the support of the democratization process in the country. Now, if you look at the big cake and look for the different color codes and look for the migration color code, which is this kind of, what is this color? Purple. You see that? Now, that's actually EU support coming from the EU Trust Fund for Africa. Specifically, migration related activities in the sense of addressing the root causes of migration. That package is 10% of the entire cake, which even shows very clearly that the funding sources of the overall development assistance are more targeted to other fields than migration itself. I do believe this is also an indication that there was no such deal, such precondition laid out by the European Union towards the newly elected democratic government of the country as a precondition for EU development assistance. None. Should the Gambia divert from a democratic path, which I don't think is going to be the case because Gambia has decided, should that happen, generally speaking, yes, EU funding, trust me, would dry out, as it did under Johnny's time. Now, this doesn't mean that we don't have cooperation, discussion ongoing with the government regarding how to better manage the migration issue, the return and reintegration efforts we have been making together.
So those discussions, do they include sending some undocumented, some Gambian migrants living in Europe back to Gambia? Is that part of the discussions?
It is part of the discussion, yes, because I made it already clear last year or the year before, if you traced your archives, that those who exhausted their legal possibilities for seeking asylum or legalizing their status in member states, and if they exhausted all these possibilities, those migrants are going to be returned. This is a matter of principle. This is a part of the respect for rule of law. No country wishes to have illegal migrants on its territory. The question is not that. These are also international obligations, if you wish. The question is the how. The question is the how, and that's why I think it's important we have ongoing discussion with the government services as to what is the best way to do this. A, the operation itself, the return operation itself. B, more importantly, the reintegration of these returnees. Now, if you look at the figures, I think it was in the media lately, almost 4,000 migrants returned to the Gambia since 2017, mainly by IOM. A project EU is funding with IOM. Out of this, well, the figure was 3,600 something, sorry, to be exact. Out of this, more than 90% of them were voluntary returns. Now, we put emphasis on the fact that once they are returned, they have something to get assistance from. And that's what we call the reintegration process. For me, it's incredibly good news. Of course, it could be better, but I do believe it's incredibly good news that out of this 3,600 something, already almost 60% of them did receive a reintegration package via different instruments, the different projects we are implementing together with the government. That practically means someone should do a calculation. How many of them are already involved in skills development, training, entrepreneurship, whatever the package was tailored for them.
So that we were talking about those who have never made it to Europe, right? Those who maybe ended in Libya and voluntarily returned to the country.
Not only this 3,600 something also includes some of those who returned either voluntarily or were deported from Europe.
So the ongoing discussions, the talks that we talk about, that the European Union is engaged with the Gambian government, how do you reconcile that with the recent deportations? We've seen that in recent months, some Gambians are being deported from Germany. How do you reconcile that with that? The fact that the EU is, holding discussions with the government to send Gambians back to Gambia. And then we have seen Germany deporting some boys in recent times. How do you reconcile these two?
It's very simple. Those who were returned have been identified by government services as Gambians. And since they exhausted their possibilities to stay longer in the territory of Germany, they were decided to be deported. But that's not what the EU is discussing, in the sense that this particular flight you refer to was a German flight, yes. It was not an EU-sponsored return operation.
But Germany is part of the European Union.
Yes, it is.
The biggest
yes, it is.
donor.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
And the arrangements we have been negotiating on behalf of the European Union are engagements which were not performed before. In fact, what happened that up until we started negotiating these arrangements with the government, EU member states did their own negotiations bilaterally with the Gambian authorities, under which, time to time, there were deportees coming back to the Gambia. Indeed, back in 2017, the total number of forced returns might not have been more than a few dozens, rather 1 or 2 dozen than more. In 2018, it could have been a higher number. The reason I can't tell you an exact figure is because I'm not aware of these numbers. Because they were returnees coming back on a bilateral basis, not under an EU-managed return operation. You may have heard the expression Frontex. This is the EU agency responsible for the protection of the external boundaries of the European Union member states. They are the one taking a central role organizing these operations. Frontex is also engaging with the Gambian authorities to work out so-called working arrangements via which these operations can take place in an organized manner. And let me add one more thing. The negotiations we started with the government last year did include from the beginning till now, as we speak, a paragraph which clearly stated that the return operations, the number of returnees, shall not exceed the capacity of the country to absorb. That means, I can assure you that we know, I think by now the number of identified Gambians staying without a legal status in Europe is in the range of thousands, 10,000s. I can assure you that we know a giant operation bringing all of them back at the same time. Because we don't have an interest in that. We don't have an interest in breaking the economy of the country or the social fabric.
You are planning to do it piecemeal. Is that correct?
Well, I don't like the expression piecemeal, but gradually, yes. As I said, the bottom line is that those who has got no legal status in a foreign country are to return to their home country. The question is not that. The question is how to achieve that goal. Should these discussions encompass some new elements as to how this and when this should be done, this is a question of discussion in the future. There is no, it's an open discussion. We are talking about a partnership. So we are listening to the signals, to the opinion, to the views of the partner countries. And this is not EU-Gambia only. This is each and every country of origin from where migrants reached the territory of European Union member states.
So I'll ask one final question.
Yes, please, because you
are
allow pretty much dominating the floor.
Pretty much I'm taking over that. Sorry about that. So
please, first the lady, and then in the back, in the middle.
My name is Adiso from Gambian Parents. My name is Adiso from Gambian Parents. Okay. In your last press briefing, you stated that EU respects the rule of law, and as a result, you chose to deport illegal migrants who have exhausted all possible legal means of adjusting their status, but out of sympathy or based on the struggles or risks that they took to get to Europe. Could the EU not have considered giving them a chance as long as they don't include their own laws?
What do you mean giving them a chance?
Like they went to the they struggled to get to Germany, to the European country, and they stayed there, but they did not create any other crimes in the country. Couldn't have your government consider them and let them stay there?
Well, I mean, it depends on, I understand that, and I do confirm that majority of the Gambians without a legal status in Europe are not criminals. Let's clarify that. But yet, not having a legal status is in breach of certain legal instruments or regulations. I mean, I have a tourist passport, let's say. If I travel to a country as a tourist, I can stay there for 3 months. If I stay 4 months, I'm already breaching that country's rules and regulations. So when it comes to legal status, if you don't have that, it's already in breach of law. So in that context, it is disrespectful for the rule of law. Now, should member state eventually consider that? I cannot tell you, because I mean there are certain prerogatives which are within the European Union and among the member states are still member state prerogatives. Should they decide to change their national laws, which would be more flexible with that? I don't know. Could happen, but I wouldn't build on that in my planning. Just to give you one example, some years ago, member states were very critical, very clear about reintegration processes in the country of origin, which means training, skills development, whatever the case is, happening in the country. That's why we have projects by Ireland, by YEP, by GIs and the others. Now, already we have some parts of European member states where they provide training, sort of training in the country where they are illegally staying. So things may change, but that's why I said these discussions are ongoing. This is not preemptive, and this is also because there is no, 100% proof solution to this. This is an ongoing issue now. What we are proud of is that we are discussing it with the countries of origin and their governments and their society as to what best would be to do. I know other powers and other countries from where they just deport illegal migrants without any integration package in the country. That's what we don't think is the right way to do. Is it painful? Yes. It's helpful. Please.
Just to add something concrete, the ambassador just said that indeed we try to do it in the best way possible, and we try also to focus on integration opportunity and so. One important thing. Have you heard of any other YEP project in this country? The YEP project has been funded by the EU for 1 year and a half. Is there any other example of a country putting in place this kind of instrument? It doesn't exist. It's the only one. We'll add more opportunities. We have in this chart, you see that 10% are devoted to migration. It's devoted to reintegration opportunities. That's what we aim at. And I say reintegration opportunities, I should say integration opportunities. YEP and the other projects are aimed at those people who return, voluntarily or not voluntarily, but also, and that is for 99%, to those people who are here, who didn't make it, who want to find a job, who want to be trained, who want to access finance, who want to set up a business. And this is what we do in terms of migration. This is the migration chart. It's creating jobs, it's creating access, it's creating opportunities. And I don't think that any other bilateral or multilateral organization or country has been doing the same kind of effort.
Can we go around first and then we'll come back to you? Is it alright? I already promised myself to the gentleman.
It's a question it has to do with first question.
Should have.
I mean, you stated that EU respects the rule of law. But all the deportees we interviewed at the airport on Monday told us that they were treated as criminals the first time they were arrested. They were put on chains on both their hands and legs. Some of them were very sick and some of them were even seriously injured. But yesterday they are put on a flight back to the Gambia. Could you consider that respecting the rule of law?
Listen, you are asking me for an operation which we didn't manage. So I am in a very awkward position to respond to this. But I know for a fact that there was even a doctor on the flight, coming with them, flying with them. Now, with all due respect, I cannot judge who was a criminal and who was not. You've got to ask the German authorities for that. Please.
Okay. Good morning. My name.
Just speak it louder, please.
Good morning. My name is Modi Toure. I report for Radio North Bissau, Kasuma in Senegal, and I work for Brikama Community Radio and Radio Plans. My conclusion is the returnees were given $200 as fare to their various homes at the airport, because I was there. So I don't know whether that was the money from the EU or
no,
you have another package.
As I said, this operation you are referring to, and the alleged 200, 600, I heard different reports, is not an EU-managed operation, okay? So if you have questions regarding that, please approach the German authorities, the German embassy or the representative, because I don't have the details myself, I tell you very frankly. But I know for a fact that those coming back under the EU-organized flights, return operations, voluntary or forced both, those are receiving assistance right upon arrival by IOM and different other services of the Gambian system. And they are also beneficiary of reintegration packages, where, for example, the so-called transportation fee, they are issued right upon arrival, is in the range of 60 euro or so. This is what the IOM is doing. I think the IOM made it very clear throughout. The operation you are referring to on Monday was not such an operation. Next.
Good morning, everyone. I am Suleiman from the Voice newspaper. Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmed. I actually highlighted the European Union have initiated a project in Gambia worth for 20 million euros, and ranging from infrastructure, employment, agriculture, among others. Probably the implementation of this project will be in collaboration between the European Union and the Gambian government. And what are some of the mechanisms are you putting in place to make sure that there is no financial risk involved in this project?
Okay, very good question, very important one. If you look at the project partners, go through the list, you will find very well-known partners, be it a UN agency or whatever the case is. They are responsible for the financial management of the project in the first place. Even if they cooperate with the Gambian state actors, like in the case of the feeder roads, UNOPS is the project implementation partner, and they have collaboration with the National Road Authority or maybe other partners, but they are responsible for the financial management, and it's not in the hand of state actors. Now, the projects, with the different general and specific conditions of the projects are very clear as to what such financial management means, the use of the funds available. So it's, in this sense, the European Union regulations are extremely clear. For us, it is also an aspect of monitoring the project implementation. Every project is audited, so if there is any misuse, any fraud, anything like that, will be detected either along the way or once the project is performed. I can tell you, we suspended payment of project contractor because we had issues about certain aspects of the project implementation. And then we suspend the payment and we may or may not pay. But there are inbuilt mechanisms in that. And I think your concern because there's always a bit of a notion like you can't trust the government because they are misusing funds and blah, blah. In this sense, I am a bit kind of relaxed because most of those project implementing partners, they are not government services. I don't know if you want to add something.
No, think you made it very clear, each and every project is audited, and it's sometimes audited several times. Meaning that we are not even talking about fraud, we may talk about errors. I mean, you don't follow the rules, you make a bad procurement. If this is indeed confirmed by the audit, you get a recovery order and you have to reimburse the money. That's it. And then it goes back to the overall envelope of the Gambia, and we try to re-engage it in a new project.
So, Marcel, if I can make a follow-up on that, similar to what you just said.
Speak up, please.
If I can make a follow-up to that, similar to what you said, because that was my concern as well. And you did mention that there will be audits from here and there. But you did mention about Japanese best practice.
Yeah.
And trust me, I think every Gambian feels that impact. Because we've seen a lot of roads being built within that period. And a small amount of money compared to what is being discussed now. Even though you mentioned about benchmark, but do you think it would be rather wise, I mean, to continue that process, like the way you do in Japan, even though you feel you trust the government and then there is a benchmark?
Wait. I understand your question. But first of all, we are talking about a comparison between a dictatorship with serious human rights reports. So we are talking about a democratically elected government. Now, what I said is that 1/3 of this overall EU support comes in the form of budgetary support, which is cash from treasury to treasury, based on certain conditional arrangements. That's what the government gets. The project implementation, the project interventions, you see the table, the thick table, which are not budgetary support. They are with other international partners. And that's where it's not the government who really manages the financial aspect of a project implementation. Now, regarding budgetary support, as I said, the budgetary support we apply, the methodology is like a pulling factor. So we don't give the money to government to do something, so we are not pushing the government. We say, if the government, in agreement with us, achieve this, and this, then we disperse the money. And then they use it. So in that sense, they cannot misuse that. Because we are trusting them that they will use it. Like the first disbursement, I tell you frankly, in August, physically arriving to the Treasury here in August 2017, we knew that that money will be for patching the debt, paying back the bills, paying the salaries of teachers, and all this, because they had serious gap in the national budget in that year. So what we had benchmarks, like releasing all political prisoners, very easy benchmarks, so we were sure they would be able to achieve, because by the time we signed this stability contract, most of the political prisoners were already released from prison.
One more question, sir. According to the rules which have gone through, EU is funding the economy, the funding the state aid. According to this, that will end of August.
I'm not saying that.
No.
The mandate ends.
The mandate, that's what I mean, the mandate. I mean, in an instance where the government of the Gambia is not done with the reform of the security sector, and they are still not really planning to have our own Gambian security to handle over, the European Union give a little bit more time, to fund EU economic soldiers to stay.
Okay, let's separate two things. The mandate of the economic forces are not EU drafted mandate. The mandate is determined by ECOWAS. Should ECOWAS summit consider necessary to keep the economic forces in the Gambia after end of August this year, that's an economic decision. Then comes the question, who pays the bill? Now, what happened so far is that ECOWAS made a decision, extending the mandate already a few times since January 2017, and then they requested, approached the European Union and requested funding of this operation. So far, the European Union was in position to say yes and positively support ECOWAS efforts, because we do believe it's good. Now, I cannot assure you that the same EU response will be given should ECOWAS decide in August this year that they will prolong for another year the economic mandate. Why? Because I cannot preempt a decision which is going to be taken upon a request coming in the future. We don't have interest in prematurely taking economic out of the country. if the reforming of the Gambian forces are not at a stage which is already kind of an assurance that they will be able to take upon this responsibility. Neither we want to keep such international forces in a democratically transforming country for far too long time. So I think the challenge, the political challenge for ECOWAS is to find the right balance. When is the good time to start talking about an exit strategy for ECOWAS? If you ask my political view, it's never positive for a government in any country in the world if they complete their office 4 years, 5 years, depending on the duration, when there are always foreign forces in the country. Because it gives how fragile that country is, that government could be. So I don't think it's in the interest of whatever Gambian government, Barrow government or the next one, to keep the economic forces here forever. Because I do believe Gambia is capable of doing that. And that's why they are pushing this issue of the reforming of the security sector, because you can do it, no doubt. It takes efforts, there are sometimes difficult decisions to make, it's painful, but it is possible. And what happens after August, I cannot assure you, I cannot preempt. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't be very seriously considering funding again. But it's not up to me, it's not my decision, it's a decision pretty high up, it's real time. But what I reflected in the table is the fact. Right now, the budget is there, and you know very well that the first year budget was 8 million, the second year is 14 million because the Senegalese forces were also integrated into ECOMIC. So now we have every foreign troop stationed here, working here under one umbrella, and that's the ECOMIC. What happens after September is a question of discussion. There was, yes, please.
I was supposed to come in, but then.
Yes, sorry, I mixed you guys up. My apologies.
I'm Aladi for the West Coast Radio. I'm just going to make a follow-up with what my colleague asked that question. The EU is providing more funding support to the economic, and looking at the Gambia, you are providing technical assistance in terms of the security reforms. But will the EU consider to also provide more funding for the Gambian security? Looking at what is happening in our country, especially our internal security. Our security are grappling with resource, mobilization, equipment and other things. If the EU will consider also to give more funding. Because I see on the chart that you have, that's the bigger cake. But we have a problem in this country. We have a security and now we're giving more funding to the economy. If you would consider to give also more funding to or provide funding for our security.
I can tell you right away, there is no appetite in the European Union to give direct support to the forces, the Gambian forces. Right now, as long as we are supporting we are funding the economic troops in the country, and we are supporting seriously the second sector reform. Because at the same time, we don't see the progress on the Gambian side when it comes to right-sizing the forces. Everybody knows that certain aspects or certain parts of the overall security disposition in the country was ballooned up by Trump. Is it really needed? The threat towards the country requires such a size of army, police, etc., etc. This is the assessment the Gambian side has to make. Is it really justified to have such a ballooned defense forces under the geopolitical situation of the country? Can the Gambia afford? Can the Gambia afford having such a heavy posture? These are the questions the government is analyzing, I'm sure. These are the questions the government will have to make difficult decisions. Right-sizing the institutions, the services. That's what we are interested in. Now, unless this takes kind of form of development in the sense of actions and making the changes, I don't think we can talk about supporting services. Why? I'll tell you one example. You have now given size of the armed forces, but are you sure you really need all of them? If we start today kind of developing all the forces in the armed forces, and tomorrow the decision will be that, okay, this is what we don't need, but we need this, then you would have invested a lot into something which is no longer necessary. But this decision, like right sizing, is not yet taking place. That's why I believe it's premature to talk about direct support for forces. Also, there is an issue when it comes to EU support. We are not really equipping armies and special forces and intelligence. The EU type of intervention is not for that. What happens though, that's my second answer to the same question, or a different angle of the question. There are already member states, EU member states, who are engaged with the Gambian government and services directly on service level support. For example, police, training police officers, training police intervention unit, how to tackle aggressive demonstration, how to tackle crowd control, etc. These are, for example, trainings which, as far as I know, the Germans are involved in. We have UK involved in helping Gambian army prepare for the Darfur mission. And we have French engaging with on service level. That's what member states usually do. The European Union doesn't have an army as such. We don't have an intelligence service as such, therefore there is no such service-to-service contract or support, but on member state level.
Because the focus there is looking at the new dispensation. We all want democracy to thrive in this country. Now, once you have mentioned our police in terms of crime management, you know, when demonstrations happen, they lack some of these equipments to control the crowd, like the water cannons and other things. That's where I am coming. If the EU will consider, you know, in terms of providing assistance to that. I'm not talking about the army. I'm talking about the internal security of this country.
Sure. That's exactly why I brought up this issue of EU member states supporting on a bilateral basis different institutions, and that's why I brought up the example of the police. I do believe crowd control, crowd management, demonstration management does not start with water cannons. Don't get me wrong, I'm ex-military, so I know what I'm talking about. It's not about equipment. It's about command and control. It's about organizing, it's about planning. Of course, equipments are also needed. But as I said, there are already ongoing trainings in that regard, including certain equipments as well. So it's coming. On the other hand, when we talk about security sector reform, I mean, if you look at this cake, why the blue is that big is probably because of economy. Imagine if funding wouldn't be spent so much on economy. This slice of cake would be much smaller, and perhaps what money spent on that could be then diverted to something else. When I attended the FGM conference early February, many participants asked me the question, why we are not spending more on such an extremely important job, like fighting FGMC. And I know it doesn't work like that, because the funding for ECOMIN is going via the African Peace Facility. It's not something we can use for fighting against FGM. But as a matter of principle, there are very justified legislative demands. If you look at this cake, I know there is limited what we do in terms of education, in terms of health. I know. Because under the given circumstances, when we discuss the main areas of intervention with the government, this is what we come up with as a most important. And also something we can realistically consider funding. Perhaps in the next planning exercise, for the next financial framework and development assistance post-Cotonou, we will have also, hopefully we will have a slice in this case for education, for health, and many other things which we believe is needed in the country. That's why we also got to be careful as to what we really support in terms of funding. But I need to see more progress in SSR before we can talk about support to different institutions.
If I may just add, I used to say that the first responsible of the population in any country is the government of this country. It's not the EU, it's not any bilateral. The first responsible of the population of the Gambia is the Gambian government. So the initiative should come from them and we can support. Now, if you make your job as a journalist and you go and check the national budget, which is the means that is available to the government, which reflects the choices, the arbitrations that the government has made, you would see, for example, that the payroll of the Ministry for Basic Education is only the fourth one. There are 3 ministries who have a larger payroll than the Ministry for Basic Education. Among those 3 are 2 that are indeed covering the security forces. Doesn't it ring a bell to you? Is it normal that one country would spend more on security forces than on teachers? We are now in a democracy. It's a transition, but progress has to be made, and that's why we talk about downsizing, right-sizing. I mean, there is something that is still to be progressing here. Does the Gambian not need more teachers, more nurses, more doctors? Is it normal to spend so much on security? To still spend so much on security? Is there such a threat?
Security is paramount, if I may make a follow-up.
Education is not paramount?
You say that every government should be responsible of its citizens. But why is the EU not bold enough to tell Gambians that the blame that you are sitting on us as far as the migration is concerned with this deportation, that why not turn your attention to your government? Because if they had took their stand, probably our youth would have not migrated to Europe. The EU would be bold enough to put some of those things to our government.
I'm not sure I get your question.
Yes. We are talking about governments being responsible of
Which government are you talking about?
our governments.
The Gambian.
Certainly. Okay. That's what I'm talking about. There is a lot of debates and reactions from Gambians as far as this deportation is concerned. But where is the problem coming from, and where did the problem start? Is it from the EU or from the Gambian government?
Well, I don't think, don't look at migration as a problem, first of all.
Now I'm telling you, it is generating a lot of reaction from Gambians as far as the deportation is concerned. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about migration in a broader perspective.
But this is something which needs to be managed. I wouldn't put blame on the government. If I put blame, I would put blame on circumstances which might have been created by different actors, including certain aspects of previous governments. Why Gambians wanted to leave the country. Yeah, but does it make sense now to put blame on Jammeh's created climate of fear? It doesn't make sense now because it's already the past. We finished with that. You are busy with your TRC. Now we have to look at how to manage what's on the base now. Those who don't have legal status will eventually return. As I said, the question is how. We don't have interest in breaking the country in that. That's why I said don't expect mass returns. With all due respect, gentlemen, the numbers we are talking about is what? Yesterday or Monday, who was there to see how many? Biggest ever. So we are not talking about mass deportation. What I think is an extremely serious issue here is the disappointment. Communities are disappointed because their boys and girls wasn't able to achieve the goal, to send home remittances. They consider these poor boys and girls like losers. They are not. At least they are alive. Many fellows died on the sea or got lost in the desert. So I think this is more than just a technical operation or a financial issue. It's also a psychological, a social issue. That's why we try to make every effort in these programs whereby we try to create opportunities in the Gambia. And also trying to follow the slogan we have today or this year is make it in the Gambia. To help people. And with all due respect, don't get me wrong, but we cannot reward those who made sacrifices but also breached laws. And not reward those who stayed at home because they respect the laws. I mean, we have two Gambians in desperate situation in the country who never took the back way, maybe who couldn't afford the back way. Would it be fair to reward all the illegal migrants and not to care about those who actually respect the rules? So it's a difficult question. But let me give the floor to some other, because I see there was one. Yeah, okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's already been allowing us. But I'll just take you back to the issue of deportation of these Gambian migrants who have exhausted their legal battles in Europe. It seems you say most of those who are deported, especially of recent, are deported by individual countries, and it was not through an EU process of negotiation with the Gambian government. But the last time we had an interview, when you told me there is this EU migration practice document that you have with these countries, Gambia is not an exception. I just want to know whether, since this EU good practice document has been discussed, whether do we have any Gambians deported on the EU negotiation through this good practice document? I don't mean migrants who want to come back willingly, but forceful talk, whether you have any between the EU and the Gambia. And I also want to know whether the Gambia government has signed this EU document, because you told me it's not legally binding, but whether Gambia has consented to it, whether they have signed it. Just in connection to the deportation of Gambians in other countries that EU might not be a favor of, I just want to ask whether the EU is also monitoring the country, member countries, because we know the EU is just a body. These migrants are not stationed at the EU Commission in Europe. They are stationed in countries, individual countries, and it's only through negotiation with these countries that EU can take a decision. You cannot force countries to do things they don't want to do. But if you say it is not the intention of the EU, the European Union, to deport these migrants in big numbers back to their countries, considering factors like Gambia, the recent change in the economic situation, I think you're putting that into consideration. But will it not be also important for you to also talk to some of these member countries who might be hurrying these deportations and deporting these migrants in numbers, to talk to them about the concerns you have about deporting these migrants? Because if the EU said we are not going to do this because of this, and you are allowing your member countries, although you cannot force them, if you cannot force them, have you made any effort, attempt to discuss with them about this, not to deport these migrants in their big numbers, to avoid what EU is avoiding?
Right. I try to give response to all three questions, because I see like
they are similar.
It's like two questions. First of all, the good practice document, which we've started discussing with the government at the beginning of last year, has been going on for month and month, technical discussions about the protocol, about who is responsible for what, who informs whom, how to manage this issue. That is not a document which, as a document, was signed. No, please, because this is not a legally binding document. This document doesn't have a signature at the bottom of the page. This document was endorsed by the two sides in exchange of notes advance. So this is the answer for the signature. At that stage, the document, I think, was already published in many places, so you could see, you could read, and I would certainly encourage you to read through the lines, because there is not a single line which is something which would bring shame. I do believe this is a clear proof of the responsibility both sides share in terms of how to do such operations in a manner which respects human rights, which respects dignity, and which is manageable and sustainable. Just to clarify, I said, yes, you shouldn't expect massive numbers, thousands returning in 1 day or 2 days. But as I said, gradually those without a legal situation will have to leave the territory. Now, if you compare the number of identified illegal Gambian migrants in European member state territory, and if you compare how many of them returned so far, not rocket science to do the conclusion that is very little. The return rate is very little because I do believe member states also applied quite a good degree of understanding of the current situation in the country. Now, the question about EU return flights under this agreement, yes, indeed, there were a few since November. We are in the range of 2, 3, maximum 5. And sorry for my inaccuracy as regards the number of flights. I didn't prepare for that. And also because the delegation itself is not involved in the operation. It is between Frontex, European member states, and different services, immigration, etc. So the answer is yes, there was. And I don't think the total was more than maybe 2 dozens. In these flights, in total, not in one leg.
How many people?
That's what I'm talking about, probably in the range of 20.
20 people.
But it's not exact figure. If you want me, we can try to trace it and give you an exact figure, but not in one flight, in maybe 5 flights.
That's the agreement between the
there is no agreement on the number of flights.
No, I don't mean agreement. I mean
under the framework we worked out. Yes.
The good practice document.
The good practice document was consented by the 2 parties back in April, May, something like that. And then we had a grace period. The grace period means that there was no action under this umbrella. Because we also wanted to give time to the Gambian partners to develop their capacities, to prepare for the implementation of the protocol. And that's why these flights only started in the second half of November. Now, again, the question here, and if you read the document you will see, there is no figure. Because we want to make sure we do it in a sustainable manner without doing anything counterproductive. At the same time, not only that we have all these projects, the trust fund projects which are directly addressing root cause of migration, but also many other interventions are also indirectly addressing the root cause of migration. Beyond that, we also offer a package of capacity building, assistance if you wish, to the government. And these negotiations are still ongoing. So what I believe is going to be the case, but again, difficult to forecast the future, the joint efforts like member state capacities working together with Gambian capacities will bear fruit in terms of increased capacity in the country, in the Gambia, so the Gambian government as a whole will be able to manage such things even once the IRM project will be over. IRM may not be staying here forever. The project we sponsor with IRM comes to an end in 2020, right? 2020. But you can see the details in the brochure. So it is important for us also to make sure that Gambia develops her own capacities to tackle this issue. There was a last segment of your question which I now forgot, so please help me out. What was the last part of your question?
No, I think
that is good practice. We had the number of flights.
That is whether you are.
Oh yes, the communication. Important, very important. Thank you for the question. Because what we see on the ground is the action itself, right? Voluntary or forced internals coming back. Rest assured, there is a mechanism in the European Union on EU level, managed by basically DG Home, which is responsible for home affairs, and they have a network, a certain committee responsible for coordinating issues with all member states, as well as they do collaboration on a bilateral basis with those member states who are involved in this issue. As you rightly said, not every member state has got Gambians on their territory or migrants on their territory, but those who have, they already established a smaller group, a group of the villain, so to say, which is called the European, help me out, what's the abbreviation for ERIC? Return and Reintegration Network. European Return and Reintegration Network, ERIC, which is a smaller number of member states, I think it's 15 out of 27, who are specifically involved in and interested in working on this issue of migration management, return and readmission. These representatives were also in the country as part of the negotiations which have been ongoing ever since early last year. So this also shows that not only that on EU level, DG Home is coordinating or trying its best to coordinate the issues on member state level, but also member states took their efforts to do more and participate more actively in building capacities for countries of origin. Now, as this capacity building is a discussion ongoing with the government, we are actually in the stage of expecting a government response to the package we are offering as to what is the roadmap we take, what kind of actions, what kind of joint activities we will carry out, which all together helps the government build up capacities. It's ongoing, so it's not conclusive yet. I'm sure once it's conclusive, there will be project events and news about it. And rest assured that I can keep you updated on progress made in this regard, perhaps at the next, if not earlier, than at the next press breakfast we gather have. I promised, wait, I don't want to you and then the lady, yes.
You have there.
Yeah, well, who starts? You start. Okay, before I give the floor. We talk about migration, we talk about return operations. Nobody is interested in the good news. And the good news is that in the new Gambia, there are less and less departures. Isn't it good news? I mean, less departures. I mean, Gambia and Gambians have been among the top 3 and top 5 nations, nationalities, among those who arrived in Italy between 2011 and 2016. For many years.
More than Senegal.
More than Senegal. Gambia was among the top 3, top 5. Now, Gambians are not even among the top 12. I think this is also a news. And this is also a reflection on what is the trajectory of the country. I think it's not because people wouldn't be able to sponsor their backway trip. Communities could still put money together. Probably this is because some of them may find opportunities here to make it in Gambia, or some of them feel like receiving certain support, certain opportunities by different interventions, whether it's EU or not, doesn't matter. But I think it's a big news, and I would be really interested in investigative journalism, which comes to me and says, you know, I went around and this is what we learned about the trend in terms of Gambians leaving the Gambia. But anyway, sorry, I don't want to dive into the topic.
Thank you very much. My name is David Noah from Professor University. Sir, in your statement, you made mention of security. And, you know, security, when it comes to the EU-funded or supported projects in the Gambia, it takes a huge number of 47% of the whole chunk of support that is given to the Gambia. So in 2018, there was this general that was brought to the Gambia through the EU Cooperation, General Blackman from DICA to help in the security reform of the Gambia here. So today, what can you tell us concerning the progress made so far when it comes to the aspect of security reform? Given the fact that in your statement you made mention that the Gambia cannot rely for the longest time on foreign security to uphold the security of our nation here. So what is the progress made so far when it comes to the issue of General Blackman helping in the reform of our security?
Thank you for your question, and let me first start by saying, with all due respect to you, whom I personally admire, we didn't bring General Blackman here. We brought the Geneva Center for Democratic Control of Armed Forces, DCAF, as a project partner. Because we wanted to have the Gambian government in this security sector reform on strategic level and on technical level. Now, DCAF is a world acknowledged institution who participated in many different projects similar to SSR in many different parts of the world. And they have a pool of experts they draw in depending on the project they got to do. Now, this is how General Retired Brigadier Tim Blackman came here as a resident expert, and he is in charge of organizing DCAF interventions when they have so-called short-term experts coming in for a specific job. This is a short intervention, 1.5 years, started last May. So in fact, DCAF in its current form will come to an end by the end of October this year. They were busy with assisting the Office of National Security in defining the national security policy, which is now on government level to be adopted. But more importantly to me, they were also busy with helping the security sector institutions to be audited. They call it human resources audit, which practically means they look at the different institutions like police, armed forces, immigration, all the security services, to see how they are structured, how they are equipped and enabled to do whatever is the mandate for them to do. This process is still ongoing. Some of the HR audit was completed in police, immigration, and armed forces. Yet, like NIA and what's the name of the drug law enforcement agency? Yeah, those are yet to be completed, but the project is still on. So these are interim results. And I think it's a big deal in the sense that it's extremely important. Again, this is a Gambian-owned reform, right? So at the end of the day, it is the Gambian government, the Gambian authorities who will make decisions. So what we are trying to do with DCAF is also to assist them making an informed decision. When it comes to right sizing, you've got to know what's in the services, what's working well and what's not working well and why. When it comes to restructuring, reforming, downsizing, whatever the case is, you've got to have these factual details. So if you wish, this audit of the different institutions is a tool for decision maker, the government, eventually His Excellency the President, to make informed decisions for the benefit of reforming the structure, for the benefit of the taxpayers, for the benefit of the budget, and you can continue. Now, this project intervention is short-term, and this project intervention also enables the process of the security sector reform. What we expect from the government side is that based on these interim project results, they start making the necessary follow-up actions. In brief, this is what I can tell you about the DCAF. Was there other question? Or just these results of the DCAF, right?
Yeah.
Now, without diverting the question, but I think it's important to add that the DCAF is one of the interventions we offered, and it's perhaps too early to say, but I'm impressed of the result they so far. But it's not the only intervention we offered in terms of expertise and enhancing capacity, because under the budget support operation, we also brought in technical experts. Sosi Tatikian, if the name says anything to you, is the resident expert under the other intervention, which also helps the Office of National Security in different drafting and defining different policies, like the delineation of roles and responsibilities of the different institutions. And under that intervention, we also have other experts, technical experts, coming in for short term. To tell you one example, right now we have here an international expert who will help the Gambian government to define, we will make recommendations to the government, how to establish a so-called security vetting system in the country. This is a rather sensitive issue, this is a rather delicate issue, but this is also a tool with which good governance is something which can be achieved. It's also a tool via which any government, any democratically controlled government can have tools at its disposal to ensure that those in sensitive high positions in the governance are kind of vetted, so any security risks with them or around them can be mitigated. Therefore, their performing on the job would not be adversely influenced by whatever foreign or criminal aspects. This is an example of a short-term expert which will come here and make a specific recommendation. Some of them are also involved in drafting relevant laws, amendment of certain laws. We also, these experts and their expertise are also benefited in terms of making suggestions to the Constitution Review Commission as to what component some of these aspects in the security sector should be and how reflected in the new Constitution. I do believe DCAF is not a standalone thing, neither the other intervention. We try to make a synergy between the two. We try to make sure that they both complement each other. And don't forget that the technical support, in the sense of expertise made available to the government, is not limited to these two experts and their other experts. We have an international advisory group consisting of experts from ECOWAS, from African Union, from US, from France, and many other. I think this group of international advisors is like what? A dozen?
Yeah.
10 or 12, something like that, which is also an indication how much the international community, ECOWAS included, of course, expect from the government to do. We provide assistance, but there shall be no external player, there shall be no foreigner, there shall be no tuba telling you how to define your own security. This is a Gambian responsibility, and it's got to be Gambian owned and Gambian led. Of course, the expertise is there, use them and create your own system. Yeah, that's the answer for the question. And then I promised myself to the lady, and then, okay.
I'm Hanson from Gambian Balance. Sir, can you please publish the full contract or project that our ministers signed with you? And why did you sign an agreement with the Gambia to report people and give them less regards to the international human rights laws? Did you see Gambia as a desperate country for help or what?
I'm not sure I got your question in the sense that we didn't sign any agreement with any minister as such about deportation. I remember in the social media recently there were a few pictures of me and former ministers also distributed. There was one picture, I was told, where I was signing something with Sengato, who at that time was the foreign minister. Indeed. And I even gave my pen after the signature to the honorable minister. And that was the agreement on the EU election observation team coming to the country for the parliamentary elections. Then there was a photo of me with Honorable Mike Fati and Madame Fumiko Nagano, the IOM Banjul chief, when we signed the tripartite initiative on migration management, which is one of the projects. None of them puzzled about the migration of the employees. But come again, please, the other aspect of your question, which I couldn't grasp regarding human rights issues. Or did I misunderstand?
It says, did you sign an agreement with the Gambia to deport people and give them less regards to international human rights laws?
No, we did not. And I do believe in the migration management, return, readmission, reintegration operations we are consulting government actors, discussing with them, they all do respect human rights standards and evaluations. Any further question from you? Hold on, because I already promised myself to read that, please.
Okay. And with regards to this handout, talking of improving agricultural practices and competitiveness of Gambian agriculture, as groundnut is the main cash crop in the Gambia, what is the EU doing or role to aid in eradicating of aflatoxin in the Gambia and also ensuring competitiveness of Gambia's products in the international market?
All right. This is far too difficult. I'm just didn't answer it.
It's probably far too technical for me too. But anyway, the EU is not doing anything specific on the groundnut value chain. We want to improve agricultural practices throughout. It's not focused on the groundnut per se. I don't know why, but in this country, agriculture has been on a constant decline for 5 years, at least. Maybe linked to climate change. It may also be linked to migration, lack of workforce. In that respect, the good news, as we said, is that apparently, from what we see, from the numbers we have, less and less people leave, or at least they leave the country. But there might be more and more people in the countryside, just because they don't find an opportunity there. So what we all aim at, and it's not focused on groundnut or whatever crop, is to create the conditions so that also in the countryside you can make a living. You can earn your life, you can have opportunities, you can have leisure, you could have electricity. When we said, and it's really very important and we are proud about it, that every school and health center in this country will have access to electricity, it also means that the most remote school in the most remote village of the Gambia will have access to electricity. This means that you send your child there, that your child can have an education there. That's development. That's what we want to do also in the countryside. You know very well that in this specific country, and it's a major problem I think, you have the West Coast, 60% of the population at least, and then the rest of the country, it's much less developed. It's also a factor of internal migration, of course. If you don't have an occupation in the countryside, what can you do? I tend to say this country works on 2 legs, and those 2 legs are seasonal. 4 months agriculture, and then what do you do? 6 months, 8 months tourism, and then what do you do? One of the problems also is that there is very little link between this booming tourist industry, and you are doing very well in that respect. There are more and more tourists every year, and it's also linked to the fact that this country is safe. We find back security here. But the tourism industry is not benefiting the countryside. Very little tourists go to the countryside and spend money there because they stay on the beaches, and that's something that you could change. But also most of the dishes that you eat in the restaurant or that you purchase in the supermarket or in the grocery shops here does not come from the Gambia. It comes from the neighboring countries. So it means that, and it's a caricature of agriculture, it's about practices, but it's also about markets. Having the Gambian producers to reach the markets. You don't need to export. Your export is on your beach.
Listen, I don't know whom I promised next, but we are running out of time. We only booked this place till 11:30, but we started later than we thought we would. So then, gentlemen, please, and then yes. But hold on, I gave you the floor first.
Thank you very much. My name is Mahmoud from Africa TV. I want to know what are the components of the Senegal corridor, that the EU is funding, and how much money has been involved in the Senegal corridor?
All right. Listen, the Senegal corridor contains the bridge and the road. Let's put it in a simplistic manner. The bridge, which was recently inaugurated, was from African Development Bank. Now, what these are sponsoring to the tune of 16 million euros, 1/6, is the connecting roads. make sure that the bridge and the road is all together creating the corridor from the border crossing to the border crossing. The EU intervention in that sense, what I mentioned in my introduction, is this 16 million contract with EIB, the African Development Bank. They will manage the road construction and the establishment of a new road which really bears the traffic, the heavy traffic, the corridor will eventually have. All right?
Yes, Mr. Ambassador, I just want you to see more light on this. A number of partners proposed loans which will be difficult to take in the Gambia's present indebtedness situation. Is it a factor that is hindering, some of the loans or grants coming to this country as far as the national conference is concerned? If our income debt, if the economy is doing better?
Listen, I do believe even if roughly 60% of the pledges in the Global Conference were loans, and it was roughly 40% which was grants, even if so, I do believe it's a great success, because the total pledge also reflects on the trust international community placed in New Gambia. Now, it is the responsibility of the government, and of course it is your responsibility to check up on the government and of course the National Assembly and everybody else, that the Gambia and the economy moves. Now, should the debt management be more successful, the Gambia would have better options to consider undertaking loans. And then the pledges come very handy because many of them are very concessional. So I do believe it is eventually a great help for the country. I think the responsibility and the most important thing for the government now is to stabilize the fiscal situation and improve the situation in terms of debt management. Because no country can build herself from cash. Every country considers taking loans here and there. It's normal, it's nothing wrong with that. But remember, I think a year ago, the Gambia declared the indebtedness at the range of 120%, and then it went up to 130, which was already on the verge of collapse. Now, they did that kind of recalculation of the
increasing of the GDP.
Yeah, and with the new figures we are talking about
80% of the GDP.
80% of the GDP. And this in itself may not be considered high, provided you have a booming economy. But that's not yet the case in the Gambia. So I do believe 80% is still very high. On the other hand, and that's the trust from the international partners, should the Gambia improve in that and decrease this percentage by also boosting the economy and creating an environment more conducive, more friendly for foreign investors, etc., then this 80% will eventually go down, and then the government will be able to take up on those loans, some of those which were pledged at the conference.
And you are sharing with us the good news that the number of departures, has dropped. I mean, would that mean to say that what was the reason why Gambians were leaving? Was it because of the dictatorial regime of China, or is it because Gambians are now denied the visas rather than, is it because our young people are denied visas? That's why they are not leaving the country?
Listen, brother, you're asking me a difficult question. I came in January 2016 myself. Asking me why Gambians started living in big numbers in 2011, 12, 13. Speculations were about the human rights issues in the country. That's certainly true. Speculations were about the level of poverty, about the lack of possibilities for a young Gambian to find his her way in the country. I do believe that, the figures, if they are reliable, are not lying. If there are less departure, that means perhaps this perception of, can I make it in Gambia or not? The perception by many communities that you can only really make improvement in your life if you have a relative abroad who keeps sending home money. If that perception breaks, and if that perception changes, because you will have more and more young, successful Gambians making it in the Gambia. I think that will certainly contribute to a different landscape in this issue. Now, putting this as a reason for a number of visa denials, I don't think that would really happen, because the refusal rate at the US Embassy is also somewhere around 50–60%. And I mean, there is a question, why is that so? I don't think the reason why they took the back way was because of the visa was refused, because I don't believe many of them didn't even bother asking for a visa.
They give some of those reasons because of the denials of visas. That's why they are embarking on this perilous journey.
Or you mean that those who left the country, they all submitted a visa and they all were refused, and that's why they went back way?
Yeah, some of them give that as a reason.
Well, I mean, that's my question for the other question earlier regarding respect for rule of law. Just because your visa request is denied, it doesn't justify you to enter, engage in illegal means. If my credit request is refused by the bank, am I allowed to rob the bank? Sorry for my stupid example, but you know what I mean? That logic doesn't really work. What I do believe is important, if you look at what's happening now, the number of legal possibilities for Gambians to go to Europe, either via work permit or the exchange scheme we have under Erasmus, is growing. The issue of enlarging legal possibilities is on the table. Was on the table between the European Union and the Gambia or Africa as a whole. In the new EU-Africa alliance, this is an issue. I think it's good. When it will really bear fruits, of course, it takes time, but I do believe this is already an improvement in Africa. On the other hand,
on the human rights context, Mr. Ambassador, migration, it's a fundamental human right. Yeah. So if you put it in that context, once they are denied a visa, I mean, it can be a reason to embark on the back way to go to Europe.
Oh, listen, look at those migrants who are escaping from war. They are not denied access to safety. We are talking about here not that aspect of migration. It is economical reasons. And it doesn't justify, because they are not escaping from hunger. It doesn't justify the illegal way to get to Europe.
But Mr. Abato, would you tell me that economic, migration is not a human right? If one intends to travel because they want to explore opportunities.
I start saying at the beginning, if you listen, you heard, I start saying there's nothing wrong with migration.
But economy, I think that's the problem of the European country. Some of these economic migrants, well, most of these Gambians are considered as economic migrants. That's why they are deporting them.
No, they are deporting or other member states, because we are not involved in that. But rest assured, there is due process provided. I mean, if you look at a case which lasts for years, during which time the Gambian or whoever migrant is in the territory of that member state. I mean, it's not a quick fix like, you come, sorry, to go, you refuse. No, no, this is a due process. And more than that, there is a appeal procedure. Now, I know there are lots of civil society organizations assisting migrants staying in the given country in their case of proceedings. I do believe it is part of a state of law, respect for rule of law, when you do make procedures, but once it comes to an end, then there are consequences of that. Any further or any other guest?
Maybe the last one. Because they are told not to prolong a bit. But this time around, I just want to go back about the project that you launched here. EU, the European Union, has mentioned numerous projects in this country, ranging from infrastructure projects. But looking at the ongoing projects here, according to you, in fact, you said some of these projects have been done to enhance democracy in this country. And looking at this project here, you have not seen any media being featured here. And to enhance, to my own observation, to enhance democracy in any country, the media must be put in place. Media should be concerned. And looking at the Gambian media for the past 20 years, it has been fragile due to the total government of Yahya Jammeh. And since this new government came into power, and the media though is trying, but there are still some things lacking behind. Therefore, those the European Union have any plans to make sure that they support the Gambian media to enhance the democracy?
Listen, I mean, this is not something which started in 2017. Cooperation started before. I remember in 2016, I had a project launching on the journalist side, which was aimed at equipping, enhancing, promoting activity for the media, for journalists. Yeah, that's the UNESCO project, exactly, which we launched back then in 2016. Some of you might have been there in the Kaira, one of the ground floor meeting rooms, and I had that time information minister learning there. Because I quoted a few words from someone that I got the freedom fighters regarding the free press. So the Gambian media or journalism did receive support before. Now, again, as I said, also in other aspects, this is not a perfect cake. When it comes to planning and doing, you try your best under the given circumstances. You also take into consideration what others are doing. And as far as I know, there are projects aiming at assisting in the development in the field of journalism. And perhaps then in the next...
Yeah, I understand that the Gambian media benefited from funds to build capacity of Gambian journalists and the security system, if I'm right. But what I'm saying is, looking at Gambian media, there are so many media houses that are poor condition, and they lack some of the devices that they need, such as mobility and other instruments that should be that journalists can use. So therefore, the European Union have any plan to support the Gambian media.
Listen, in principle, we are we have a very fundamental interest in improving media and journalism in any country, partner country. Because I do believe media plays an extremely important role in the game of democracy. Rest assured. Any further questions? So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your interest. It was a pleasure as always. You may or may not be happy with some of the answers I gave. You are certainly welcome to pursue the issues, to pursue your agenda. And even if this gathering is over now, the office is open. Please contact us with any questions you may have.
I just want to make an announcement, a last announcement, and I will give the floor to Wilde. We have just recently launched what we call the Lorenzo Natali Prize. That is aimed at journalists. And that offers possibilities for?
Well, for any journalists that are working on development, you can go, well, you can look at the delegation's Facebook or Twitter or website, all the information is there. So it's basically an open call for any of you who are working on development issues that want to submit one of your stories. It's an open competition for all African countries and all countries that the EU cooperates with. So I think the deadline is in April, so you still have some time. And there is actually a prize of 10,000 euros that can be won for the journalists. There's different themes, so you can go and get all the information online. So we strongly encourage any Gambian journalist that would like to participate in this competition. And if you have any more questions, you can also send me an email or give me a call, and I can direct you to where you can find this information. So good luck.
All right, thank you so much.